All right, so we are diving headfirst into Steven Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
And today we're going to try to unpack, I think, some really potent wisdom from this book.
Absolutely.
You know, this book has been getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
It's been praised by a lot of really big names.
Oh, yeah.
Like Simon Sinek and Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
And they are calling this book essential reading for anybody that really wants to level up, not only in their business,
Yeah.
but also just in life in general.
For sure.
And I think given your interest in personal and professional growth,
Yeah.
you're going to find some real gems here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that really stood out to me when I was reading this was this concept of the 5 buckets for success that Bartlett talks about.
Yeah.
And he basically says that your career is built on 5 interconnected things.
Yeah.
Knowledge, skills, network resources, and reputation.
Right.
And so he's saying that every professional's career is built on those 5 buckets. But here's the catch. He's really adamant that these buckets need to be filled in a very specific order.
Right.
And he gives a really good example of this. He tells the story about Richard, who is this super talented employee who gets this amazing offer for a CEO position in New York. It's like a super high-paying job.
Dream job.
Yeah, total dream job on the surface.
Yeah.
But Bartlett uses this example to really emphasize why knowledge and skills are the foundation of your career. It's like, those are the buckets that nobody can take away.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, even if there's some sort of like career earthquake, those buckets are going to stay full.
Exactly.
So it's like, you can have all the connections and resources in the world, but without those foundational buckets of knowledge and skills, you're kind of building your career on shaky ground.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so how does this idea of the 5 buckets then tie into the specific laws that he talks about in the book?
Well, this feeds directly into Law 5, which is you do not get to choose what you believe. And this law challenges the idea that we have complete control over our beliefs.
Okay.
Think about it like you've got flat earthers, people who believe in Santa Claus, or even people who think that King Charles is a vampire.
Okay, so you're using some pretty extreme examples here.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. You know, these are deeply rooted beliefs that people hold, despite evidence to the contrary.
Okay, so what's the takeaway here for someone who is listening and is trying to, you know, grow and evolve as a person?
Well, what Bartlett is saying is that beliefs are often formed not through logic or reason, but through this selective acceptance of evidence, whether or not it's actually true. And to illustrate this, he points to a study that was done about political beliefs. And in this study, people were shown polls that predicted either a Clinton or a Trump win. Now, the interesting thing is that people tended to only shift their own predictions when the poll aligned with their desired outcome.
So it's like we see what we want to see.
Exactly. We tend to interpret information in a way that confirms our existing beliefs.
And so that makes it really hard to change someone's mind, doesn't it?
It does, which is where I think Bartlett gets really insightful. He argues that attacking beliefs head-on often backfires. And so what we should be focusing on is presenting new positive evidence that actually resonates with people's underlying values.
So not tearing down their existing belief.
Exactly.
But offering a better alternative.
And a great example of this is the whole MMR vaccine and autism debate. Instead of arguing with parents who believed in this debunked link between the two, researchers focused on the benefits of the vaccine. Like protecting kids from deadly diseases.
So it's like shifting the focus to something that they actually care about.
Exactly. Appeal to their values.
So how can we then apply this idea to our own personal growth journeys?
Well, it's about challenging our own limiting beliefs. You know, we all have those beliefs that hold us back. And by examining them closely, picking them apart, like a lawyer cross-examining a witness, we can actually weaken their hold on us. And what this does is it opens up possibilities for greater confidence and achievement.
Because we're not limited by these self-imposed restrictions anymore.
Exactly.
That's a really cool way to think about it. So how do we go about actually shifting those beliefs? Especially if we can't just, you know, choose to believe something different?
Well, it's about understanding that our beliefs are often built on a foundation of what are called cognitive biases.
Okay.
These mental shortcuts our brain uses to process information.
Yeah.
And by recognizing these biases in ourselves, we can start to challenge them and make more informed decisions.
Okay, so it's not about forcing a change in belief.
Right.
It's about kind of chipping away at the biases that underlie those beliefs.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about in situations where we need to persuade somebody else?
Right.
Like in a negotiation.
Yeah.
Or even just a casual conversation.
Well, that brings us to law 3. You must never disagree.
Never disagree.
Yeah.
I feel like I do that all the time.
Right. But hear me out on this one.
Okay.
Bartlett's argument here is that finding common ground, starting with agreement, actually makes people more receptive to your perspective. And he backs this up with research on something called cognitive dissonance, which basically shows that agreement opens the brain up to new information, while disagreement tends to shut it down.
So, like, our brains are wired to defend our positions.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And he uses this really interesting example of a couple that's evaluating property values.
Yeah.
And when they agreed on the value, their brains were more active and receptive. But when they disagreed, their brains essentially shut down, rejecting any new information.
So it's almost like we're building a bridge of understanding.
Right.
Instead of battling it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and this actually leads us to law 6, which is a really simple but surprisingly effective psychological trick for motivating action.
All right, I'm all ears.
This law is called ask, don't tell, the question behavior effect.
Okay, the question behavior effect.
Yeah.
Now you've got me intrigued. Is there really a magic question that makes people do what you want?
Well, not quite magic.
Okay.
But close.
Okay.
Remember Ronald Reagan's famous question during his presidential debate?
Yeah.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Yeah, I remember that one.
It's a powerful question.
Yeah, what makes questions so powerful?
Well, unlike statements, questions demand an active response.
Okay.
They force the brain to engage, prompting people to think and commit to an answer.
So instead of telling someone something, you're prompting them to arrive at their own conclusion.
Exactly.
Through a question.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And to illustrate this, Bartlett actually uses a personal anecdote.
Okay.
He was running uphill in Portugal.
Okay.
And he found himself making excuses to stop. But then he started asking himself simple yes-no questions, which eliminated the wiggle room for self-deception.
Oh, interesting.
And kept him moving forward.
So using questions to bypass that internal resistance that we all have?
Exactly. And this technique can be applied to motivating others as well by asking thought-provoking questions.
Yeah.
You can guide people toward a specific action or outcome without being overly directive.
So it's a more subtle,
yeah,
but potentially more effective way to influence behavior.
For sure.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah. And this brings us to law 7.
Okay.
Which is never compromise your self-story.
Never compromise your self-story. And this law really gets into how our internal narratives shape our behavior and our success.
I love this stuff.
Yeah.
How our thoughts and beliefs influence our actions.
Yeah, totally.
So what is Bartlett's take on that?
Well, he uses this really gripping story about boxer Chris Eubank Jr.'s sparring session in Cuba to illustrate this point.
Okay.
So Eubank gets knocked out of the ring by this massive Cuban heavyweight.
Ouch.
Injures his knee.
Oh, no.
But then he makes the decision to get back in the ring despite the pain.
Wow.
And he talks about how he was building a self-story of resilience.
Right.
Proving to himself that he's the kind of person who doesn't give up. Even when things get tough.
I love that story.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It really speaks to that self-belief.
Yeah.
And pushing beyond our limits.
And it's not just about positive self-talk.
Right.
It's about building a self-story based on evidence.
Okay.
On actions that back up our desired narrative.
I like that.
So by consistently acting in alignment with our desired self-image, we're actually reinforcing those beliefs.
Right.
And making them more deeply ingrained.
Yeah, so you're proving it to yourself through your actions.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
But of course, we also have to talk about the negative stories that we sometimes tell ourselves, the limiting beliefs that hold us back.
We all have them.
We do. And Bartlett talks about the damaging effects of negative stereotypes on our self-story.
Okay.
And he shares his own experience being told as a child that Black people can't swim.
Wow.
Which actually made it harder for him to learn.
So that external narrative became internalized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he brings up research showing how these negative stereotypes can impact everything.
Wow.
From academic performance to career choices.
Yeah. It's so powerful.
It's a reminder that we need to be aware of the narratives that we've internalized.
Right.
And actively challenge them with positive experiences and evidence.
I love that.
And that brings us to Law 8.
Okay.
The lollipop effect.
The lollipop effect.
Which delves into the world of habit formation.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So it starts with a story about Bartlett's father quitting smoking by replacing cigarettes with lollipops.
Oh, that's interesting.
He didn't just try to stop cold turkey.
Yeah.
He replaced the bad habit with a new routine.
Okay.
It's the power of substitution.
Interesting. So instead of eliminating the bad habit,
right,
you're replacing it with something else.
Exactly. And this ties into the concept of what's called the habit loop.
Yeah.
Cue, routine, reward.
Okay.
And by understanding this loop, you can create new positive habits that stick.
Cool.
But as we all know, breaking bad habits and forming new ones is hard.
Yeah, it takes a lot of willpower.
It does. And it's important to remember that willpower is actually a finite resource. It's like a muscle that gets tired with use. Okay. And to illustrate this, he brings up a study where people who had to resist eating cookies.
Oh, no, I would fail that study.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Were less persistent when faced with a challenging puzzle compared to those who got to indulge.
So it's like you use up your willpower.
Exactly.
By resisting the cookies.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to change multiple habits at once, you might be setting yourself up for failure.
It's better to focus on one habit at a time.
Okay.
Give it your full attention and willpower.
Makes sense.
And then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Once you've established that solid routine.
Okay, so now this next law really stood out to me because I think it's really relevant in today's world of marketing and branding.
Yeah.
It's Law 10, avoid wallpaper at all costs.
Yes.
So tell me about this one.
So this one dives into the brain's tendency to tune out repetitive stimuli.
Okay.
It's a phenomenon called habituation.
Habituation.
It's our brain's way of filtering out the noise, the stuff that's not novel or engaging.
So it's like our brains are always on the lookout for something new and exciting.
Yeah.
If it's not stimulating, we just tune it out.
And that's why Bartlett argues that brands need to embrace absurdity.
Absurdity, okay.
Yeah. What does he mean by that? Well, he says you got to do something unexpected.
Great.
To break through that habituation filter. And he offers a perfect example.
Yeah.
His own company installed this giant blue slide in their office.
A slide in the office?
A giant blue slide.
That's crazy.
It sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But it generated a ton of media attention.
Really?
They were featured on BBC, BuzzFeed, Vice News.
All because of a slide?
All because of that slide.
Wow. So being unconventional can really pay off.
It can. It's about standing out from the crowd.
I like that.
And he also mentions Tesla's marketing strategy, which is all about generating that buzz and excitement.
Right.
And BrewDog, the brewery that literally showered people with beer.
Okay.
So these brands understand that to capture attention, you got to do something memorable.
Right.
Something that breaks through the clutter.
Okay, so be bold, be memorable, stand out.
Yeah, don't be wallpaper.
Okay, I like that.
Now let's move on to Law 14.
Okay.
Which might seem a little counterintuitive at first.
All right, let's hear it.
Friction can create value.
Wait, friction?
Yeah.
Isn't that usually a bad thing?
Well, it can be, but Bartlett argues that creating intentional friction in the right way can actually enhance user perception.
Okay. I'm curious, how does he explain this?
Well, he tells this funny story about his barber who would always do this end of trim routine where he'd do these extra snips, even though he wasn't actually cutting any hair.
So it was all for show? It
was a psychological trick.
Okay, but what was the point of that?
Well, even though it was just a gesture, it made a difference in how Bartlett perceived the haircut. Interesting. He felt shortchanged without it. It's what he calls a psychological moonshot, these small investments that can actually drastically improve perception.
So it's like those little extras that really go a long way?
Exactly. And he uses Uber as a prime example.
Uber.
They've built their entire business model on understanding these subtle psychological principles. Take the peak end rule, for instance.
Okay, the peak end rule.
Where people judge an experience based on its most intense moment and its ending, rather than the overall average.
So even if a ride is uneventful, a good ending makes the whole thing feel better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's idleness aversion.
Idleness aversion?
The idea that people are actually happier when they're busy.
Interesting.
Even if it's not busy by choice.
Okay.
And Uber leverages this by showing riders exactly where their car is.
Right.
And how long it will take. Minimizing that uncertainty anxiety.
Yeah.
And creating a sense of control and progress. They're really good at that.
They are.
It's like they've taken these seemingly insignificant details and turned them into key components of their user experience.
Yeah, it's all very intentional.
It is.
Okay.
And then there's this great example of the Japanese bullet train cleaners.
Okay.
And their choreographed 7-minute theater.
7-minute theater.
They turn this routine cleaning process into a performance.
Wow.
Which enhances passenger perception of cleanliness and efficiency.
Interesting.
It's brilliant.
So how much thought goes into creating a positive user experience?
It's incredible. But then we have to ask, what about the actual product itself?
Right.
Does presentation really matter that much?
Yeah.
Which brings us to Law 15.
Okay.
The frame matters more than the picture.
The frame matters more than the picture.
Which is all about how presentation impacts perceived value.
I mean, I could see how packaging and branding can play a role.
Yeah.
But is that all there is to it?
Well, Bartlett shares a personal anecdote about falling out of love with his favorite clothing brand. After seeing a behind-the-scenes video of their mass production process, it made him realize that the carefully crafted image, the story the brand had built around their products, was more important than the reality of the manufacturing.
So the story we tell ourselves about a product can be more important
Sometimes it can.
than the reality.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this also connects to the classic Pepsi challenge, where people preferred Pepsi in a blind taste test, but preferred Coke when they knew what brand it was.
It's all about the branding.
Context is everything.
Yeah.
And he also mentions WAP, the health monitoring wearable.
Yeah, no, WAP.
And how they intentionally avoid adding a time display to their device.
Why would they do that?
Well, because they want to maintain that image.
Yeah.
Of an elite athletic device.
So by adding something as simple as a time display, it would kind of cheapen the brand.
Exactly.
It would make it feel less exclusive.
Yeah, less special.
Hey.
It's a reminder that less can be more.
Okay, so we've talked about beliefs. You've talked about persuasion, habit formation, the power of presentation.
It's a lot.
What's next on our deep dive?
Well, let's shift gears.
Okay.
And talk about facing uncomfortable truths.
Okay.
With Law 24, don't be an ostrich.
Don't be an ostrich.
Yeah.
I'm getting the sense that burying our heads in the sand is not the best strategy.
It's not.
Okay.
And to drive this point home, Bartlett shares a truly powerful story about the Andes plane crash survivors.
Oh, yeah.
These guys were stranded for 72 days.
Wow.
In the freezing mountains.
Yeah, I know that story.
Facing unimaginable hardship.
Yeah.
And one of the survivors, Nando Parado, actually hiked for 10 days.
It's crazy. Through the Andes to find help.
Unbelievable.
Talk about resilience and pushing through obstacles.
Wow.
What's even more incredible is that Parado later said he did it because he couldn't bear the thought of having to eat the bodies of his mother and sister.
Oh, my God.
Who had also been on the plane and perished.
That's just heartbreaking.
It is.
And inspiring at the same time.
It's incredible what people are capable of when they're faced with those kinds of situations.
Yeah.
But what's really surprising is that Bartlett connects this to research showing that believing stress is harmful actually increases the risk of dying.
Wait, so you're telling me that our mindset about stress can actually impact our physical health?
The research suggests that it can.
That's wild.
It is.
So it's not about eliminating stress.
Right.
It's about changing our relationship to it.
Exactly. Reframing pressure as a sign that something matters, that it's a challenge to overcome, can actually transform our experience of it.
Okay, so like looking at it as an opportunity for growth rather than something to be feared.
Exactly. And he uses examples from Navy SEAL training where they learn to see pressure as a test of their resilience. And, you know, establishing relationship check-in rituals to address issues before they become major problems.
So it's like being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's move on. to another law.
Yeah.
I think it's particularly relevant for entrepreneurs and business leaders.
Okay.
Law 26. Why will this idea fail?
Oh, interesting. I love this one.
What's the power in asking that question?
Yeah, I think it's so powerful to ask that question.
Well, it encourages what he calls pre-mortem analysis.
Okay.
Which is essentially anticipating potential weaknesses.
Yeah.
Before they become major setbacks.
So it's like you're proactively identifying problems and coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
Before they even happen.
Yeah. I love that.
And to illustrate this, he actually shares an experience of his own where he almost launched this podcast network.
Okay.
And he was really passionate about it.
Yeah.
But he asked himself that uncomfortable question, why is this a bad idea?
Wow.
And it led him to actually shut down the project.
So he was able to walk away from something he was passionate about.
Yeah.
But he could see that it wasn't going to work.
He could.
Wow.
It was a tough decision.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be the right one.
Yeah. I bet it saved him a lot of headaches.
It did.
Okay.
And this isn't just a gut feeling. He actually brings up research showing that this pre-mortem method actually improves our ability to predict outcomes.
Wow.
And avoid costly mistakes.
I love that.
Yeah.
So being able to walk away when you need to
is crucial.
Okay. And that leads us to Law 31.
Okay.
Leverage the power of progress.
The power of progress.
So this is all about celebrating small wins.
It is.
Yeah. But how do small wins then contribute to achieving these big, audacious goals?
Well, what Bartlett explains is that those small wins are crucial for building momentum and staying motivated on the path toward those larger goals.
Yeah.
And he uses that amazing example of Sir David Brailsford and his marginal gains approach with the British cycling team.
Oh, yeah. This is a great story.
It's a fantastic story.
Tell me about that.
So basically, he focused on tiny improvements in everything.
Okay.
From bike design,
last year,
hand-washing techniques.
Wow.
And through this, they transformed the team from underdogs into champions.
It's amazing what can happen.
It is.
When you focus on those tiny little things.
Those small changes compound over time.
Exactly.
And lead to those extraordinary results.
And this isn't just applicable to, like, cycling.
No.
This is applicable to anything.
It's a universal principle.
Yeah.
It's that 1% better every day concept.
I love that. So it's like those small changes might seem insignificant in the moment.
Yeah.
But they add up.
They do.
Over time.
And they make a big difference.
So before we move on to the next set of laws.
Okay.
What stood out to you the most so far from these first few chapters?
Well, I've always been fascinated by how our thinking and beliefs influence our actions.
Me too.
And how we can leverage those insights to achieve our goals.
Yeah.
And I think the story about the MMR vaccine really highlighted that for me.
Okay.
It's a great reminder that we can't just force our beliefs on others, but we can present new information in a way that resonates with their values and motivates them to change their behavior.
So it's not about winning an argument.
Exactly.
It's about understanding where people are coming from.
It's about understanding those underlying motivations and beliefs.
Yeah, I love that.
That drive people's actions.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to dive into the next set of laws.
All right, let's do it.
What's up next on our list?
So let's explore some of the laws that focus specifically on building successful businesses and teams.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and explore some of these laws.
Okay.
That focus specifically on building successful businesses and teams.
Yeah.
Bartlett has a lot to say about this.
He does.
And I think we can all learn a lot.
Absolutely.
From his experience. So what's up first?
Well, let's jump into Law 17. Let them try and they will buy.
Let them try and they will buy.
Yeah, this one delves into the psychology of ownership.
Okay.
And how it influences our perception of value.
I'm always fascinated by the psychology behind our decisions.
Yeah, me too.
So how does Bartlett explain this concept?
Well, he starts with this charming anecdote about his niece refusing to give back a Christmas present.
Okay.
And it kind of highlights that innate sense of possessiveness that we all have.
Right. Like once you have something, even if it's not yours to keep, it's hard to let go.
It is. Yeah. And there's a scientific term for this.
Okay.
It's called the endowment effect.
The endowment effect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he cites research showing that people are more likely to hold on to something they already have, even if it's objectively worth the same as something else.
So it's not just sentimental value.
Right. It's a real psychological bias.
Interesting.
He mentions a study where participants were given either a lottery ticket or $2.
Okay.
And even though they could swap them for equal value, most people chose to keep what they already had.
It's like we get attached to things that we possess.
Even if it's just a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Or $2.
Okay, so how can we apply this psychological principle in a business context?
Well, Bartlett argues that businesses can leverage the endowment effect by letting customers try their products or services before they buy them.
Okay.
So it's about creating a sense of ownership.
Right.
Even if it's temporary.
Like those free trials that software companies offer.
Exactly. Yeah. It gets people hooked on the product before they even commit to buying it.
Right.
Think about Apple and their retail stores.
Okay.
They encourage people to touch, play with, and experience their products.
They want you to hold that iPhone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you've held that sleek new iPhone in your hand, it's harder to resist.
That's so true.
It is. It's a subtle but powerful way to tap into the endowment effect.
Okay, so let's move on to the next law.
Okay.
This one I'm particularly interested in.
All right.
Because it's incredibly relevant to our work here in podcasting.
Yeah, for sure.
It's Law 18, fight for the first 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, that's a crucial one.
So tell me about that.
This is all about capturing attention immediately.
Right.
Especially in today's world of constant distractions.
We're bombarded with information.
We are.
And we have really short attention spans.
So you got to grab people right away.
Yeah.
And Bartlett actually opens all of his talks on stage.
Okay.
With the same 4 sentences.
Okay, I'm curious.
My name is irrelevant. The company I work for is irrelevant.
Right.
The industry I'm in is irrelevant.
Okay.
All that's relevant is what I'm about to tell you.
I love that.
It's bold.
It's so good.
It cuts through the noise.
Yeah.
Makes people pay attention.
You're making a promise to deliver value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also talks about Mr. Beast.
Okay.
The YouTuber.
Yeah, I know Mr. Beast.
Who's mastered those opening seconds of his videos.
Yeah.
He believes in making a compelling promise.
Right.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Something that makes you want to keep watching.
No time for introductions.
No.
Get straight to the point.
Deliver the goods.
So this applies to everything.
It does.
From video content to marketing campaigns to even just our everyday conversations.
Even how you start an email.
Okay, I'm going to start paying more attention to how I start my emails.
It makes a difference.
Okay, what's next?
So let's dive into Law 19. Sweat the small stuff.
Sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, this one might seem like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But I think Bartlett has some really interesting insights here.
Okay, I'm all about attention to detail.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear how Bartlett goes beyond the obvious.
Well, he's a big believer in the Kaizen philosophy of continuous improvement.
Right.
Those small incremental changes that lead to big results over time.
So it's not just about getting things done.
Right.
It's about doing them well.
It's about excellence.
Yeah.
Even in the little things. Like, for example, his podcast team obsesses over minor details.
Like what?
Like researching their guests' favorite music.
Wow.
And playing it softly in the background when they arrive at the studio.
That's so cool.
It's those little touches that make a big difference.
It makes people feel special.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also A/B test titles, thumbnails.
Okay.
Promotional materials.
So they're constantly testing and iterating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They use AI and social media ads.
Wow.
They even hired a data scientist to create an AI tool. That translates the podcast into multiple languages.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So they're really going all out
to
optimize their content.
And reach a wider audience.
Yeah.
But it's that commitment to excellence that really sets them apart.
Okay. And this philosophy of sweating the small stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just about podcasting.
It's not.
It's about any business.
Right.
Or even personal pursuit.
He uses the example of Toyota,
okay,
which became a global powerhouse by embracing this Kaizen philosophy.
So it's about those tiny improvements that compound over time.
1% better every day.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about taking a long-term perspective, focusing on consistent incremental progress.
Okay, so now let's shift gears again and explore a law that I think is particularly relevant to entrepreneurs and business leaders.
All right, I'm ready.
It's Law 28. Ask who, not how.
Ask who, not how.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah.
Well, Bartlett believes that this is a mindset shift.
Okay.
That's essential for building successful businesses.
Okay.
He argues that instead of getting bogged down in the how of doing something,
right,
we should focus on finding the right who.
So it's about delegation.
It is.
Finding the right people for the job.
Right.
Yeah.
And he uses himself as an example.
Okay.
He's built multiple successful companies.
Right.
Not because he's a master of every skill, but because he's learned to surround himself with talented people who complement his strengths.
It's about building a team.
It is.
Where everyone's strengths kind of fill in the gaps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He says business is all about people. Every company, whether they realize it or not, is simply a recruitment company.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is.
So it's not just about hiring.
Right.
It's about finding and nurturing the right talent.
Which brings us to Law 29. Create a cult mentality.
Create a cult mentality.
Yeah, I know that sounds a little intense.
Yeah, the word cult definitely has some negative connotations.
It does.
What does he mean by that?
Well, he's not advocating for creating actual cults with all the harmful practices that often come with that term.
Right.
He's talking about cultivating a shared sense of purpose, passion, and commitment.
So a team of passionate believers.
Yes.
Okay.
Who are all in on the company's mission.
Yeah.
He actually outlines 4 stages of a company's life cycle.
Oh.
The cult phase,
the
growth phase, the enterprise phase, and the decline phase. And he believes that in those early stages, when a company is small and scrappy, and everyone is completely bought into the mission, it kind of resembles the dynamics of a cult.
It's that all-in mentality.
Exactly.
That unwavering belief. In the vision.
And that willingness to go above and beyond to make it happen. He talks about the importance of creating a sense of community.
Right.
And belonging, a shared mission that everyone is rallying behind. Yeah. An inspirational leader who sets the tone. And even an us versus them mentality.
Okay, so a little bit of healthy competition.
Yeah. A little bit of that can be a good thing, especially when you're trying to disrupt an industry.
Or achieve something really groundbreaking.
Exactly. Yeah. But of course, Bartlett also acknowledges that this cult-like mentality isn't sustainable in the long run.
Right. As a company grows, things need to change.
It needs to evolve.
Yeah.
To maintain a healthy work environment.
So finding that balance between passion and pragmatism.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leads us to Law 30.
Okay.
The 3 bars for building great teams.
The 3 bars for building great teams.
This is all about attracting, retaining, and developing top talent.
Okay, so what are the 3 bars?
Well, Bartlett uses this simple but memorable analogy.
Okay.
Fire, hire, and train.
Fire, hire, train.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it starts with being willing to let go of people who aren't a good fit.
Even if it's a tough decision.
Even if it's tough.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of those bad apples.
The bad apples. Okay.
Who can bring down morale.
Right.
And stifle innovation.
So even if someone is a high performer.
Yeah.
If they're toxic to the culture.
It's better for the team to let them go.
Interesting.
And he actually shares a story about a Manchester United player who was performing well, but was still harshly criticized by coach Sir Alex Ferguson at halftime.
Really?
Yeah. It turned out Ferguson wasn't actually upset with that player. He was using him as an example to send a message to the rest of the team. To push them to raise their game.
So setting high standards. Holding everyone accountable.
Even the star players.
Okay. And then, of course, there's hiring.
Great.
Finding the right people in the first place.
Yeah. Bartlett stresses the importance of finding people who are not only skilled, but also aligned with the company's values and vision.
It's not just about ticking boxes on a resume.
No, it's about finding people who share the company's core beliefs. Who are passionate about the mission.
Okay. And then once you've hired those people... you need to invest in their development.
Absolutely.
Through training and mentorship. And creating opportunities for growth.
It's about creating a culture of continuous learning.
I like that.
And improvement.
Yeah.
You can't just assemble a team of superstars. And expect them to magically perform.
Right. You got to create the right environment.
You got to support their growth.
Yeah. Invest in them.
Make them feel valued.
Okay. Now this next law. Seems a little counterintuitive.
Okay.
Law 32. You must be an inconsistent leader.
Inconsistent.
Aren't great leaders supposed to be?
Yeah, you'd think so, right?
Consistent and predictable?
Yeah, that's the traditional view.
Yeah. So what does he mean by being inconsistent?
Well, he argues that effective leadership is not about applying a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
It's about adapting your style to meet the individual needs of your team members.
So recognizing that different people respond to different leadership styles.
Exactly. He brings up Sir Alex Ferguson again.
Oh, yeah.
Who was known for treating each of his players differently.
Wow.
Based on their personalities and motivations.
He was really good at reading people.
He was a master.
Yeah.
And he understood that what motivates one person might demotivate another.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
So it's about being flexible and willing to change your approach.
Exactly.
Based on the situation.
And the people.
And the people.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no one right way to lead.
No.
It's about adapting.
It is.
To the situation.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We talked about building a strong team.
Yeah.
Adapting your leadership style.
What's next?
Let's shift gears one last time
Good.
and explore a few laws that focus more on personal development.
Right.
Making the most of our time and energy.
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Okay, so shifting gears one last time. Let's explore these laws that you mentioned.
Okay.
That focus more on personal development and making the most of our time and energy.
Yeah, so let's start with Law 27. The value of your skills is not determined by you.
Okay, that one's a bit humbling.
It can be.
Yeah.
It makes you think twice about how we often assess our own worth.
For sure. So what's the story behind this one?
Well, to illustrate this, Bartlett shares an experience he had where he was brought in to consult for this biotech company.
Okay.
And he'd been researching, psychedelic compounds and their potential for treating mental health.
Interesting. So very cutting edge.
Yeah. And it just so happened that he got a call from somebody who was a major shareholder in a psychedelic company that was about to go public.
Wow. Talk about perfect timing.
Talk about serendipity.
Yeah.
And what he realized through this is that the value of our skills is often determined by the context in which they're needed.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about where and how you apply it.
Exactly.
Okay.
He points out that, his social media and marketing skills, which might be considered, commonplace in some industries, were highly sought after in the biotech world.
Because it was a new industry?
It was a new industry that needed those skills.
They were rare.
They were rare and valuable because they filled a need.
So it's like being a big fish in a small pond.
Exactly. Yeah. Find the right pond for your skill set.
But what happens when that pond dries up?
Well, that's where adaptability comes in.
Right.
Bartlett emphasizes the importance of constantly learning.
Yeah.
And evolving our skill set to stay ahead of the curve.
The only constant is change.
That's right.
So true.
We can't just rely on what we already know. We got to be lifelong learners. Embrace that growth and evolution.
Okay, so speaking of being willing to change and adapt.
Okay.
Let's move on to Law 21. Don't be a donkey.
Ah, yes, the donkey.
Okay, so what's the story with this one?
So this is all about avoiding the trap of stubbornness.
Okay.
And being open to new information and perspectives.
I think we've all been there.
We have.
Yeah.
Bartlett uses this analogy of a donkey.
Okay.
Who refuses to cross a stream.
Okay.
Even though there's a perfectly good bridge.
Our egos get in the way.
They do.
Yeah.
He brings up the classic example of Blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
The video rental giant that failed to adapt to streaming, like Netflix.
It's like they were so stuck in their ways.
They were.
That they missed the boat.
They missed it.
Yeah.
They were clinging to the past.
Yeah.
And they paid the price.
So we need to be willing to embrace change.
We do.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Even when it's disruptive. Yeah.
We need to cultivate a mindset of curiosity.
Okay.
Constantly questioning our assumptions.
Yeah.
Looking for new and better ways of doing things.
Being open to feedback.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Experimenting.
Being okay with not knowing everything.
Sometimes the best way to learn is to admit we don't know something.
Yeah.
And be open to being taught.
I love that.
Humility is key.
Okay, so for our final law that we'll be covering today, Law 20, spend your time where you have leverage.
This is a good one to end on.
Yeah, I like this one.
It's all about focusing our efforts on activities where we can have the greatest impact.
So being strategic with our time and energy.
Exactly. Identify your strengths.
Okay.
The areas where you have a natural advantage.
Yeah.
Double down on those.
Play to your strengths.
Play to your strengths. And let go of the things that drain your energy.
Right. The things that you're not good at.
And don't align with your strengths.
You don't have to be good at everything.
You don't.
And he uses the example of his own career.
Okay.
Where he's chosen to specialize in marketing.
Right.
And entrepreneurship rather than trying to be a jack of all trades.
It's about focusing on your zone of genius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He says, I've long given up hope of becoming an expert in the things I'm not good at and don't enjoy.
So true.
And he brings up this great quote from comedian Jimmy Carr.
Jimmy Carr, okay.
Who gives a F about all-rounders. The world doesn't need someone who's S at physics.
That's hilarious.
That's funny.
And so true.
So find your niche.
Yeah.
And own it.
Own it.
Focus your energy on what you're good at.
And then delegate the rest.
Delegate the rest.
Find people who are good at the things that you're not.
Build a team where everyone's strengths complement each other.
Okay, so it's not about doing everything yourself.
It is not.
It's about building that team.
It's about collaboration.
Yeah, I love that.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to do it all alone.
Well, there you have it. Another deep dive completed.
We did it.
We covered a lot of ground today.
A lot of ground.
Exploring so many of Steven Bartlett's laws.
Yeah, he's got a lot of wisdom to share.
He does. What stood out to you the most from this exploration?
You know, I think the overarching theme of intentionality really resonated with me.
Okay.
Bartlett emphasizes the importance of making deliberate choices.
Yeah.
Aligning our actions with our values.
Mm-hmm.
Being mindful of how we spend our time and energy.
Absolutely. It's like we're not just passive passengers in this life.
We're not.
We have the power to create our own destiny.
Through the choices that we make.
And don't forget to sweat the small stuff.
Sweat the small stuff.
Those tiny improvements, those daily habits, they all add up.
They compound over time.
Yeah, success is not a grand event.
No.
It's the culmination of all those small actions.
Those little things add up.
Yeah, well said.
All right.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Diary of a CEO. We encourage you to check out the book for yourself.
Absolutely.
And see which laws resonate with you.
Yeah.
And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Share your takeaways.
Share your takeaways.
On social media.
Keep the conversation going.
Let it going.
Until next time, keep learning.
Keep growing.
Keep diving deep.